Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We'll be focusing today on Your Eye in the Sky, introducing the brand new and improved Google Map imports for ConstructionOnline and Redline Planroom. I'm Holly Gibson, Senior Product Specialist here at UDA Technologies, joined by my colleague, Jordan Davis.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And we're also joined on the keyboards by our colleague, Sydney Dorsey, who will be standing by to answer questions. We're really excited to bring this information to you today and show some of the improvements for Google Map imports in ConstructionOnline. Now, if you're new to ConstructionOnline, ConstructionOnline is our web-based project management platform that really allows you to manage everything start to finish on your projects. So you're managing things like task management, putting together schedules, estimating, tracking your budget, and with all of that often comes things that you want to not only track, but add a little bit of additional detail to. So our Google Map imports actually work with all of our features, although today we'll be focusing a little bit more on using Google Map imports specifically within the Redline Planroom.
That's right. Redline Planroom has continued to grow and become honestly a powerhouse in its own right. When we first added in the plan management and markup tools, Holly, I think it really was just that. I think people just have the ability to upload their plans and add some markup and pin different elements of the project into it, but we've added all sorts of new features recently, things like being able to upload and keep track of different version sets. We'll touch on that somewhat today. We've completely expanded the tool set out to add Takeoff tools into the Takeoff component of Redline now, and really Redline continues to be one of our, I think, most popular features in terms of interest from both new clients and those who've used it for a while, and people are really interested in seeing all of the different changes and updates we've been making. I feel like we've been on a tear recently. This is what, the third or fourth webinar in series now where we're actually covering something brand new coming just to Redline. Of course, the Google Map import isn't completely new. We have had the ability to import Google Map images into the platform in the past, but we've added some nice bells and whistles to let you adjust and fine-tune the imports today, as well as I think we've increased the quality of the images coming in. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So we've made some improvements to the import process to really better take advantage of what you can do with the Google Maps, as well as kind of adjusting some of the things that you can do then once you get that in. So sort of both that import process as well as the functionality once you do get everything imported. So I'm really excited to show this. I think one of the reasons why we see this particular area of interest continue to grow in popularity is, when I think about the different types of work that our customers do, as ConstructionOnline, it's been around for about 10 years. And as it continues to grow exponentially, we're sort of racing toward 1 million users, right now, and continuing to see that growth. One of the things that we see is that it's being used by all different types of businesses for sure. And so we work with a lot of people who are general contractors. We work with a lot of people who are home builders, and then we also work with a lot of people who are doing things like renovation or even specialty work, people doing things like solar, energy, roofing, landscaping on both small and large scales. You see people who are doing pools, and all of these people really have a need to not only mark up plans, but very often being able to go out and pull those aerial views from Google Maps really just kind of takes it to the next level in terms of what they can do within Redline itself. So we are really excited to bring that to you guys today, and we'll dive in just a moment. Before we get started, Jordan, I know you always like to encourage people to really ask questions as we go along, and we definitely want to hear from you guys.
Absolutely. So if you take a look at the GoToWebinar panel, you'll see a section titled Questions. Now, you don't just have to ask questions as we move along today, but we would absolutely love to answer any questions that you would send in. I see a few people have already found their way over to the questions panel. If you haven't found the questions panel just yet, take a look at the GoToWebinar panel there. Open up the menu, type in a message, and let us know what you're interested in learning more about today. I think the topic is fairly straightforward, but what I've found when it comes to working inside of Redline, or specifically when it comes to importing aerial overhead shots, there's a lot of creative uses and a lot of solutions that this really allows companies to put in place. And we're excited to touch on a few different use cases today.
Definitely so. So as we jump in and look at getting started, just a quick outline of what we plan to cover. Love to see the questions and comments already coming from you guys. We'll really be focusing on a few main areas. So Jordan, like you mentioned, there are some improvements that we've made recently to this process, and we also do want to give an overall introduction for for anyone who maybe hasn't tried out the Google Map import just yet, or maybe didn't know that that was available in your account. So we'll really start at the beginning. We'll look at, first of all, where to find the Google Map import, and then how to pinpoint and scan for the area. Then we'll look at, once you've done that scanning, how to fine tune and adjust the rotation of the image that's pulled in. We'll talk a little bit about the resolution that you're getting there, because you're right, it is a higher resolution than what you can get, Jordan, if you just go out to, say, like Google Maps and try to take a screenshot or something like that. So we'll take a look at fine tuning those images. Then we'll look at, okay, so what happens to the image next? How to add that to a version set, how that will interact or work with the rest of the plans and drawings that you have within your plan room. And then we'll also take a look at how to use Redline Plan Room itself to mark up those map images. Maybe there are things that you want to pinpoint on the image itself, or notes that you need to take. So we'll look at the functionality there, as well as using Redline Takeoff to calculate things like maybe roof areas. So I know some of you out there work on roofs for both commercial and residential, so that looks a little bit different, but the concept is the same. You can go in and use the Takeoff tools to do measurements right on top of the roof, or for especially residential roofs, sometimes you need to use some of those special calculations with pitch to be able to calculate those areas accurately. So we'll take a look at how those tools work as well. So I hope by the end of this session, you guys want to go out and jump into your account and maybe try the import yourself. It's really a great tool and fun to use. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and jump right in. So to get started, of course, we'll jump into our ConstructionOnline account, and to access our plan room, we really want to go into a specific project. So of course, like I mentioned earlier, there's so much that ConstructionOnline can help you manage. And we'll take a look at some of the other places the maps are available at the end of this webinar. But to get us started, what we'll do is go ahead and jump into one of our specific projects here. And then head over to our plan room. So that's where we're really going to see some of that additional markup functionality. So I want to focus on that today. Now, once you've come into your plan room, this is where, in this case, I already have a set loaded in. So it's my preliminary set. And we'll have the chance when we do the map import to decide whether that import is going to come in as part of this set, or whether that's something we want to maybe make a new set for that allows us to do some filtering there. Now, the map option is going to be available right here under this add new area. So it really couldn't be easier to find. You're just going to select add new and then select import Google Map.
Yeah, now, some common questions that come up, especially when people are first getting started with Redline, is, well, do I have to do anything special to activate the plan room, or, how do I find the plan room? Well, the great thing about Redline is that it's built into each and every project at pretty much every single subscription level for ConstructionOnline. So there's nothing really special that anyone has to do to access the Redline tools that we're looking at today, as long as you're able to open up your project in ConstructionOnline. All of the tools we're looking at today are built right into the platform. So now we've started by selecting, import a new Google Map view. What we're looking at here is really just a preview of a rough area of where a project address is located. If the project does not have an address yet, we'll fall back and try and find the latitude and longitude for the actual location if you've input that information. If not, I think you actually start as a kind of like an overhead view of the country for the project. But of course, the next step would actually be to zoom in somewhat to actually start working through. Now, of course, we've brought over the legendary search function here from Google. I'm pretty sure that's pulling directly from their API. So the search is going to be as precise as it possibly could be. Holly, did you want to just take a quick snapshot of maybe the overhead of the neighborhood here?
Yeah, for sure. So we can take a quick snapshot here. And Jordan, like you mentioned, what's happening and why we're seeing the area that we're seeing here is because of the address of this project. So really, it'll try to get us as close as it can to the address that you've input, but it is in general still going to be looking for you to search for a specific address if we want to pinpoint that information. Now you'll notice now that I've pulled the map up, I do have a few other tools at my disposal to really help me find what I'm looking for. One is that you can move the map around, so it's not, even though we want this search to be activated, if you'd rather just scan the area, or if you're really needing to do an aerial view of something from a larger distance, being able to just move the map around, sort of fine tune the positioning is something that you can do. You can certainly switch to this type of map view as well, if that helps you to better locate the area. Although, of course, the satellite view is going to be what you really want in general for working, for pulling into your plan room. But you do have the option to sort of use these tools as you're trying to locate your area. Now, of course, very often what we're going to do is just enter in an address, or in the case of something commercial, you can actually just kind of type in the name of the business, and usually it will do a great job here. I think this particular project is somewhere in Sacramento, so if I wanted to search instead for the Sacramento International Airport, if I don't know the street address, I can just click on that and it'll go ahead and bring me to this area here. Whereas, if I do know a specific address, we can go ahead and of course type in the street address as well. Now, one thing you'll see also is that when I make a selection here in the search, the address or business that I've searched for is going to be marked with this red pin. So of course, in the case of the airport here, it's pretty obvious that that's what it is. It's really the only thing for us to look at. But very often in a residential neighborhood, let's see, there'll be, a good number of homes and things like that to look for. So here, if we just search for, say, a street, and now we come into a more residential area, you can see that there are a number of homes. So we really want to input a specific address, and it will pinpoint for us exactly, which home matches that specific address.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, the next step in the process here is actually selecting the area to scan. Now, for our demo today, Holly, I believe we were going to scan this house right here. Now, to really capture, especially when we're taking the overhead shot, as we zoom in, we're going to notice that, while it's a little larger and easier for us to see, it makes it very easy to pinpoint exactly what we want to scan. Now, you'll see that we have a bit of an overlap with some of the other properties, but that won't matter in just a moment. We're actually going to adjust a few things on the next step to really fine-tune this overhead shot. The next step is going to let you adjust the rotation of the map. Now, this was something that in the previous tool you couldn't do. This is a new addition from my understanding. Yeah,
that's right. And it's especially a new addition in terms of the fine tuning. So within your red line, you do have the ability to do some sheet rotation, especially these preset rotations where we can just basically flip from usually a portrait to a landscape type of view. But as you can see, if I choose just to rotate a little bit this way, that might not really cover exactly what I want to do. So depending on the angle I want, I might want to rotate it a little bit here. And then you can actually enter a custom rotation, which just allows you to turn that degree by degree. So if I want to just kind of click this, maybe I want to line that up straight. Whenever you're satisfied with the result there, you can, certainly just fine tune until you've got the angle that you want. And then once you're done, you would just select save and continue. And then on that next step, we'll be able to enter the details for how we want this to be pulled into our plan set. So we'll go ahead and do that here. Now, because it is going into your red line set, we do need to give this a sheet number, which could really be anything that you want. I usually name mine just map 01 or 02, something like that, so I know where it's coming from. And then I'll probably just say here, aerial property view or something like that.
Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the version set concept inside of Redline, the version sets let you build out and track different, let's say, uploads or different versions of plan sets as they are revised or as changes are made. It also is very useful for tracking different pieces of information that are added at different times, or for allowing you to filter between the original plan set, let's say, the maps, and any other addendums or other sheets that have been added later on as well. So we have a couple of options here. We can choose to add the map to our existing set. This was our preliminary plans. I think for today, though, we probably want to just toss this into our a new set on its own. This will make it really easy to filter down to just see any map imports. I've already had discussions with a few people about taking different overhead shots as the months progress, because what we've started to notice recently is that the map cadence is becoming, the updates to the overhead shots are happening more and more frequently, which has been a very interesting development. It was not like that a few years ago. So we've actually, I've talked with a few clients about keeping track of the maps in their own set and watching as their progress, happens from overhead. And
being able to see that over time, yeah.
Right. Well, and if you're in your initial phase of the project, you might not want to hire someone to come out with a drone to take an overhead shot. But as you're working through the project, you may want to set up an overhead version set. Use the map as the original, let's say, underlying or base level image, and then take overhead shots periodically to show a different view of the progress of the project as well.
Yeah, great use case. Now, once we've kind of settled on where we're going to put this new image, really the last step is, of course, just to select that save option. It's going to show you some progress as the map is uploaded. Now, at this point, it is worth sort of noting here that the image that we're capturing is a higher resolution than what you'd be able to just grab from a screenshot from your computer. And then once that's in, if we wanted to start making markups here, you would just open that up in your plan room just like any other sheet. So at this point now we can open this up and take advantage of having the different drawing tools available to us, some basic measuring tools that are available within Redline, or even adding things like text annotation. So if we wanted to, say for example, kind of highlight an area on the property here, and then draw an arrow to that, you could kind of make a little note there and enter some text. So there's all sorts of things that you can do just from a markup standpoint. Just like you can with your plans and drawings, you can do that with these overhead views as well.
Yeah, there was a company I was working with recently, Holly, who was working on a very, very large, complex property that had multiple entry and exit locations for delivery drivers. I think it was like a 5 million square foot warehouse and manufacturing complex. I don't know, it was massive. And they had issues because their delivery drivers were ending up lost. They weren't really sure which part of the complex they should be driving into. So one thing that we worked on was actually pulling an overhead shot, mapping out where the delivery driver should be entering and exiting, to really speed up that process and cut down on delays as people are waiting for things to actually show up on site.
Yeah, it's great. And that's one thing that I think is worth sort of diving into for just a couple of minutes here as we look. You guys can see how easy it is to pull in the information. Of course, now that I've made a quick markup on this, again, just like your other sheets in Redline, if I wanted to share this as an email or maybe download and print this, I could certainly do that, and it will be shareable within the plan room to ClientLink and TeamLink members or the rest of the members of your team so that everyone can see. So a lot of great things that you can do. Of course, what we're looking at here is a residential home. If we go back though to our project here, and just run through that sequence one more time, I think there's really all sorts of areas that we found people using. Jordan, you had talked about a moment ago sort of some of that progress. Even just looking at what I'm seeing here, there's so many. I've worked with companies who, kind of focus on outdoor areas or sports fields, that sort of thing. If we wanted to search for, I don't know, like maybe let's look for a stadium here in Atlanta. You could kind of zoom in if you're doing commercial work. So maybe for something like that, outdoor areas is definitely a great use case. Certainly we've worked with people who are doing a good amount of things like site work, paving, either highway paving or things like parking lots and commercial site preparation. So there really are just so many different use cases. The possibilities are endless. So as we go through this, of course, it's impossible for us to go through, every single example of, how you might use it, but definitely think of it that way. What we found is that once someone sort of realizes this is here, it almost becomes a normal part of what they do for the majority of projects, is just pull in some sort of map view to go alongside the other documentation.
Yeah, and when you start layering in the other markup tools inside of Redline, it really can become a useful communication tool to show people where things maybe you want to lay out for the project. Again, we've already talked about what I think was one of the more creative uses of Redline, which is giving people a map or directions to the property in a way that is a little more controllable and scalable. Now, of course, we're dancing around the topic a bit here, but I think something that people are really going to appreciate is, of course, the measurement tools that we have built into Redline, and especially the tools over on the Takeoff side of the platform as well. We've been hard at work scaling out Redline Takeoff, which is a new addition to the different tools inside of ConstructionOnline. I've worked with a number of companies now, some of which who are looking at using Takeoff to measure areas on things like both residential and commercial roofs. And I think that's just a natural evolution of the actual map import tool. And I can almost guarantee that what we've built into the different measurement tools have in some way been inspired from our clients who are either working in, let's say, roof repairs, who are working or who actually are in the roofing trade. There's a number of different applications for this, and it's really easy to use. I think that the measurement tools actually are fairly easy and straightforward to get in place and to start taking advantage of inside of Redline. There's not a complex learning curve.
No, there's not. It really is so easy to use. And I'm pulling in here just a few other examples. You mentioned commercial roofs, so we found a commercial recycling facility here that we might want to kind of jump in and do. Now you'll notice sometimes, depending on the area that you're in, it will zoom in just a little bit there as it's kind of grabbing some of those higher res images for us. And then really at this point we'll go ahead and give this one a number and name as well. Now one thing I'd like to point out is, so of course the first couple of imports that we did were from Redline Plan Room. I'm doing this one here from Redline Takeoff. So really you can do that from either location. And no matter where you do it, whatever's in your plan room, if you have the Takeoff enabled for your account, those sheets will automatically be available within your Takeoff section as well. So you'll notice, and we'll just close this for a moment, you'll notice that the maps we already imported are going to already be again here in our Takeoff. So it really doesn't matter which area you use for import, they're going to automatically be there. Now, of course, within the Takeoff, as I open this up, I'll have a slightly different set of tools than we had within the plan room. So when you're looking at Redline Plan Room, we're looking at doing things like markups, annotations, and even task management. So we'll go back to that in a moment, but you can actually take tasks that you've created in ConstructionOnline and mark specific places on the map that relate to that task if it's, if that's something you need to do. So great set of tools there. Within Takeoff, of course, though, the tools are really going to revolve around using the tools for measuring purposes. So we're going to look at taking some measurements here, and maybe especially taking advantage of some of the roof type measurements that have been built into ConstructionOnline. Since residential roofs are more likely to have some of those pitches that we want to account for, we're going to work with our residential roof today so that we can look at those tools alongside the map. Now, our first step is going to be to set the calibration.
Yeah, setting the calibration is very simple. Now, typically, I'll recommend for the most accurate measurements that you set a calibration off of a known quantity or a known length. Now, we know, for instance, this is probably going to be roughly, let's see, so it's 14, roughly 30 feet. Now, of course, if we had the measurements on hand, this would be very, very straightforward. So we're just going to say this is 30 feet. Now, once we've actually set our calibration, you'll see that some of the next steps are really laid out. So this is to encourage best practices inside of Redline Takeoff. Now, we encourage you to set up a takeoff group. This is going to let you combine or group your takeoffs together. Now, in the events that you really just want to move forward through the steps here, you can create a group, but you don't really need to be too beholden to it. I've worked with clients who really just want to get into the measurements and they don't really have a plan or layouts. Now, of course, as people become more refined in the tool, we do recommend that you consider building a group structure or a consistent process to actually working inside of the takeoff groups.
That's right. And for those of you who are pretty familiar with what we do here at UDA on the estimating side of things, you know that we're working towards a seamless integrated experience between your takeoff and the actual estimate. So I recommend thinking of those groups as categories within your estimate, because that's kind of part of the master plan, is it's going to transition that way for you. So that's kind of an easy way to think about how you might want to create those groups. Now, you'll notice when we're creating this new takeoff, we have some options in terms of the type of tool that we want to use. Everything from area to perimeter to just straight linear measurements. A couple of the tools really come to mind specifically for roofs. One is, of course, the roof tool, which is really a roof area tool. So this is going to allow us to input a pitch and be able to measure surface area of the roof. So that's going to be good for anything where area would be, required some of the, not only shingles, but backing and things like that you might kind of have as part of that. And then there's also a pitched linear. So if we're needing to measure things like those ridges and valleys on the roof, you can use the pitched linear measurement to, again, do the same thing. We're really just going to be measuring, instead of an area, it's going to give you a length, but we'll take into account the pitch of the roof. So as we're making those measurements, you're going to get a more accurate measurement by doing it this way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, a really common question when we first start showing off of this tool is, well, I see that it's in the imperial measurements. Is there a way for us to change that since, we're not based in the U.S.? Absolutely. That is a very, very simple way to change or set. There is different ways to change the actual measurements from imperial to metric. And of course, when you do that, it is going to change everything that you've both already measured inside of the plan set, and it is also going to update so that moving forward, your measurements are going to be in metric as well.
Yeah.
But since we are in the United States and we don't want anything on the scale of a disaster or just ordering too many materials or too little, depending on the actual measurements you're making, we are going to switch back over to imperial. And then, of course, using the takeoff tool is as straightforward as you would think it would be. Of course, I'm working on the pitched linear measurements here, which is really based on a point-to-point type system. If you really want to fine-tune, you can zoom in. Now, I've selected the segment tool, so what I'll do is I'll continue clicking through just to measure different pieces here. Now, of course, this one probably shouldn't be measured because it's not actually pitched, it is completely flat, but these lines definitely are.
Yep, and you can see that the measurements will display, of course, right on the drawing, but those also, once we've completed this, will begin to show in our takeoff as well. So we'll go through and just trace out a few additional ones here. And speaking, Jordan, of sort of accurately measuring for materials, I actually worked with someone a couple of weeks ago, and we were looking at this for the first time together. So they were looking at getting started. So we're doing a bit of a training, and they were telling me that the way that they do it now is just to basically measure out the roof using standard area measurements, and then just kind of ballpark, well, I probably need a little bit more, and add it on that way. And sometimes that worked okay, and most of the time it didn't. So they were looking for a way to do this a bit more accurately, and especially as they were starting to scale the business. So it definitely makes a lot of sense to want to come in and do this in a more accurate way. For roofs, that pitch does impact the measurements that you'll get, so you want to make sure that those are accurate. Now, once we finish tracing everything that we want to trace, we'll just either double click or select that finish segment option, and you'll notice now it commits and basically adds all of those up together for us. So again, you're not having to measure line by line and do the math by hand. It's going to add that up for you, taking into account the pitch that you've entered, and then still allow you to see, of course, the individual segments there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And also something to note as well, you're not completely committed to the specific slope that you've selected here as well. You can actually adjust that as well if you realize that you've made a mistake, or if you need to make an adjustment.
And this is something that you can set for each drawing that you do. So we know that some of the roof plans, in some cases the pitch will be the same, and in some cases certain sections of the roof that will look a little bit different. So you can, in cases where you need to adjust it, you can certainly do that for each one.
And of course, if you're working through and you need to jump back into adding measurements to a takeoff object that you've already started, you can do that from this context menu here, where you can add more measurements. Now, I was just working inside of editing the takeoff to adjust the color so it stands out from our linear measurements here. I was also adjusting the actual slope here as well, or the pitch. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just start measuring from this point. Now, I believe I selected the polygon tool for this one as well. No, I didn't. I actually picked the rectangular tool, which is probably not the most optimal tool for this type of roof. However, for our commercial clients, or the people who are using this to measure, especially like commercial buildings or warehouse spaces, you might not want to click all 4 points. You might just want to quickly drag across and select.
And in that case, if you do realize that you're using, a different tool than what you wanted, it's really easy to just, kind of scratch that measurement and start again. So now we'll use the polygon to just trace this out. And you'll notice that it will basically begin to highlight as we're tracing. So maybe we want to do this section first. And that's completed.
And then when you're finished, you can double click.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a quick double click to finish the measurement. And since this is only part of our roof, we do want to come back now and add more measurements. So now we'll trace out different sections here.
Aha, it got you as well. You
I did the same thing you did. Yeah, let's see. So now we'll trace out this section. And really the polygon is my tool of choice. I like the point-to-point tracing. It allows you to do some fine-tuning as you're making those measurements. And you'll see that for each measurement that we do, it's highlighting in the color we've selected, and then also adding that onto our total measurement here.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And if you are working on a roof with different slopes or different pitches, what you can do is you can set up different takeoffs. You can see I've titled this one Roof Perimeter, but really the name is very flexible. So you could set up different takeoff objects for different pitches, and then just go through and measure the different areas that were consistent with that pitch. Now, something else you can do as well, if you want to be very, very precise, you can also zoom in and adjust the different points on the polygons once you're finished drawing as well. Let's say that you slip and it's not as precise.
Well,
Maybe.
Yeah, let's say we're way over
Yeah.
here. Clearly, that is not helping. So, if you do find that you need to make some adjustments, you can zoom in and basically just fine tune and move those points around.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that's how you can really precisely adjust the different components here. Now, I've also seen what people will do is they'll make points along the way for very complex shapes or complex objects, and then adjust the points after the fact as well, so that way they can really, quickly and efficiently move through measuring out the rough area and then fine-tuning for very specific pieces.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, once you've completed whatever measurements you want to take here, we've got that information listed and summarized for you within your group. And then this is a good time also to look at doing a takeoff report where you can either export that to an Excel sheet or run a summary or quantity report. So there's all sorts of reports that you can run just really to take the measurements that you've created and generate a nice report option for you there.
For those of you who have been using Takeoff, we're continually adding and improving and adjusting the different reports. I saw one or two. It looked like there was a report in there for a measurement by takeoff report, which is pretty interesting. So I think that report collects the different measurement objects by the takeoff grouping over here, right? So if you wanted to add in different shapes or areas, but then pull that together into one report, that's what that report is for.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Now, we have some questions coming in, so we're pausing to kind of look and make sure that we're answering your questions. I see a great one from one of our clients who asks, can we highlight different areas in different colors to assign different tasks to people? So I think this is a good time to switch back over to our Redline plan room view. So we'll go ahead and close out of this particular takeoff and come over to the plan room. So if we're looking at something like this, and we want to maybe use some of the project management tools within ConstructionOnline. So I've highlighted an area here. You can adjust the color for anything that you're highlighting. So if you want to just come in and, very simply draw maybe a shape around a specific area, either from this type of view or on one of your plans, you can do that. And then not only could you make that in a specific color, but if you wanted to fill that, you certainly could do that as well. Now this is set to no fill, but if you wanted to kind of highlight over something like that, you could do that. And if everyone knows that, Holly's color is blue and Jordan's color is red, then you can organize your tasks that way. The other thing that's really unique about Redline Plan Room is because it is built right into ConstructionOnline. Jordan, like you mentioned earlier, any other project management tasks that we have, maybe checklists that we're working off of or to-do list items, we can effectively just drag those right over onto our plan, pin that, and of course that also would have one of your team members assigned to it, so they can really quickly come into a plan, see which items are assigned to them, mark those off as complete, do all of that right from any of their sheets in Redline.
Now, if the to-do in question, or really any item in question, does not exist, you can use the pin icon over on the left to create and add different tasks or tools directly to the plan and also back inside of the project management tool set as well. So for instance, if we were to add a new to-do directly from within Redline, well, this isn't just contained within Redline itself. This actually is going to be added into the project in ConstructionOnline as well, meaning that as we're working here on the plans, if, let's say, Alan is out in the field at the moment and we wanted to assign a task to him because we've noticed something has come up on the job site, we could easily set that up, tag Alan as an assigned resource, and that will actually send across his notifications to his phone if he has the app installed, and also potentially send over an email or even a text notification depending on different settings that he may have set. Now, we are not going to go into all of the different fields here inside of specific to-do list item today, but there are a number of different ways you can categorize and track your to-do list items, or really any other tasks throughout the platform. But once we're finished, not only is this going to be pinned to a specific point in the drawing, it's also going to add a link over on the to-do inside of ConstructionOnline back to the specific location in the redline drawing as well. It does form a two-way link, which makes it much easier to actually track down where something should be occurring, at least from a plan set perspective, or in this case, from an overhead map shot. And all you'd have to do is click on the pin icon, and not only is it going to open up the sheet, but it is actually going to highlight and focus on the specific task in question.
Yeah, it definitely creates a unique visual link and visual reference between the task and the plan drawing, the map view. That just adds another layer. The example that we always kind of think about in an area is, especially with construction, a lot of areas that are under construction may not even have street names just yet. If you're, working in a commercial building, areas might not necessarily be labeled with a big sign that says, conference room 2B here. It's really more like, okay, that room on the west corner facing the other lot that's cleared on what I think is the west side of the building. That's a different way of communicating than just pinpointing exactly, where that work needs to be focused. So we think it's a great, just visual way of communicating. You'll notice here, of course, that I've got this, highlighted in blue, but back to our client's question from earlier, if we did want this to be a different color, you'd be able to come in and, adjust that here as well, so that you could have different colors kind of representing maybe different people. And you also have the ability to come into your plan set, go to your project team, and then be able to see either items created by specific people or assigned to specific people. So if we wanted to, basically select only those that are assigned to, Jordan, or assigned to myself, you would be able to come on and see that really, really easily. So this is, again, a great way to not only for you to be able to see that from a higher level perspective, but maybe share that with someone where really all they're seeing is their task on the plan. So a lot of really great use cases for Redline Plan Room here.
Oh, I love this question. Someone was asking, is there a way to show compass direction on the map to say which direction is north? Yeah, I think that would be really straightforward with two tools. The first one would just be the arrow tool that we can select over here on the left, and then we can point it in the direction of north. Maybe if we want to make the line stand out a little thicker, we can actually adjust the thickness of the line to make it really stand out. We can change the color as well if we wanted it to maybe really show here. I was about to suggest red, but then I remembered that red-green color blindness is really prevalent, so I think that orange is a much better fit. And plus, orange and blue. You can't really do better than that, right? And then from this point, all we'd have to do is just add in a text box and put the letter N underneath it. And that's, I think, is a pretty simple way of showing people which direction is north.
Yeah, it's a great way to show that. Let's see. We've also had a couple of people just ask, so I know, Jordan, you touched on this earlier, but I think it's worth highlighting again since a couple of people have asked, is this functionality included with my current account? So Redline Plan Room is something that if you have a ConstructionOnline account, is included already for you. So Redline Plan Room is available. The map importing capabilities are available as well. That's not something that you have to add on. That's just going to be available to you within the account. The Takeoff capabilities do need to be added on to your account, and those can be added just for those team members who need to have access to Takeoff. So if you don't have that activated yet and would like to talk about how to do that and what that would look like for you and your team, definitely feel free to give us a call, and we'd be happy to talk you through how to get that turned on and which team members might need some access there. So I think that covers most of the questions that we've seen come in. I know a few of you have had some pretty specific questions, but it looks like Sydney, as always, has done an outstanding job of getting you guys answers as we go along. Before we wrap up today, one last question that we'll touch on as we look at other things that we have planned. Someone wanted to know, they came in late and wanted to know if we could send out the recording. So we will make sure to send this out to everyone who's attending today as a recording, so that you can go back and walk yourself through that process and get started using that Google Map import within your ConstructionOnline account. All of our webinar recordings can be found on our events page here. So that's udatechnologies.com/events. This is where you can find a schedule of upcoming workshops and webinars, as well as on-demand recordings for all of our recent webinar sessions. So we've really had some great and useful sessions recently, kind of walking you through how to do everything from using ConstructionOnline with clients and subcontractors, taking advantage of documentation and report automation options, looking at how to organize your files. So the list really goes on and on as far as classes that are available to you to go back and watch. Coming up, we have some great sessions planned for the next few weeks.
Yeah, that's right. Of course, the most recent one is coming up next week. I think that we're hosting at the same date and the same time next week. So if you were able to make it to this one, we really hope to see you next week, where we're going to be covering 5 mistakes that we've seen over time that, unfortunately some of our clients have made, or that we've heard about. Just horror stories in the industry, and we're going to be looking at ways to avoid them or things to watch out for. After that, we're going to be diving into new updates to our sales management tools in ConstructionOnline. Now, this one I'm really excited for. We've added in some new views into lead tracking. Some of you might have seen them already, but we're going to be doing a deep dive and covering some updates that we've already released and some things that we have still tucked away up our sleeves. So
yeah, that's going to be a great workshop. I love those updates to the sales management tools. I think you guys are going to love them as well. We'll be following that up with a workshop helping you to conquer what we've seen are the 3 most common objections to software adoption by your team. So we know you guys are committed to using ConstructionOnline, but may have team members that aren't as familiar with technology. And so we'll be talking about some strategies for helping your team members really get on board and get up and going with ConstructionOnline. And then we'll also be looking at some additional new features like customizable tax settings for your ConstructionOnline estimates, as well as project channels for Envoy chat. So some great workshops coming up. We hope to be able to see you at some of those soon.
And of course, thank you as always for joining us today. We really love being able to spend this time covering new updates for ConstructionOnline and helping you run a better business. Until next time, take care.